Hello and welcome to Stage 2 of the Dirt Racing Series. You're joining us for the first race in the Stelvio Division B+. It's going to be a very exciting one today. Got a very strong field out, which should be good to see. Just before we get started on this new season, I'm just going to recap what happened in this division in the last season, starting off with the team standings. So last season we had a win for the Dirty Goosters, taking the overall victory in the team competition with Belgian Zwift riders narrowly in second, and then Valhalla Grandbiter in third. And we had Dirt Eagle Fang in fourth and TBR Dirty Bags in fifth. Got a lot of returning teams this season, but also a couple of new ones, which is good to see. Plenty of teams out, including all of the top 5 aside from TBR, who are racing in the other division this time. We'll just have a quick look at the individual rider classifications. So last season we had Chris Herzl, took first overall with a strong performance for Watt Fabric, and in second place we had Wim van Kutsum from BZR, who were in second place in the team standings. Dirt Eagle Fan Swanee was in third. As you can see, there's a bit of a varied distribution, with some of the riders getting far more sprint points. We saw Snowy down in 7th, who had the most sprint points, but didn't quite pick up the same at the finish, or some of the KOMs that some of the leading riders did. Interesting thing to note, if you remember from the last screen, so Christoph Herzl was in first individually, did really well, but his team as a whole did a bit worse, and that's why it's so important that we focus on this as a team series, and the aim of this is to do your best job as a team. I know he's got a very strong team back together for this season, so it'll be good to see how they get on. So I'm just going to move on, just go over the course with you. So we're starting off this week with a normal scratch race on Seaside Sprint. So we have a 3 kilometre lead in, and then we're doing 4 laps of the Seaside Sprint course that you can see in the top left. There's one sprint segment that we go over, and it's going to count as a segment on laps 1 and 3. So that isn't the first time we go through that, because that's still part of the lead in. So it'll be the second and fourth time we go through it, but they're the official laps 1 and 3. But I'll talk it through as we go. See the course profile. We'll have FTS and FAL available both times on both sprint segments. And you can see on the right hand side the finishing points and all the segment points. As I mentioned earlier, it is a team event. It's very important to get several riders finishing in good positions. So it's the top 4 that count. And so just having one rider taking a lot of points won't do it for this season, as you saw how close it was between teams. It's all about who can have the most riders doing well, whether that's just by targeting the finish or by specifically targeting sprints and hoping to kind of bring it in later at the finish and pick up OK points. There's a lot of different tactics that can go on here, especially in such a stacked field. So I'll take you over to the live stream now. We'll see how we're getting on. We've still got 2 minutes to go to the start. So in this, if you aren't aware, we have 8 riders per team able to race. Only the best few will count towards the score, so you can use other riders' potential to block other teams from points, or you can all just go in as hard as you can and see who your best riders are for points wise. So you have a lot of representation from different teams, a variety of kits. Got quite a few dirt teams, so I'll just go over which kits they're in just so there's no confusion, whereas most of the other teams are in their regular kit, so hopefully some of you'll know it by now. So starting off, we've got the Dirty Box. Generally South African team, who you can see in the South African-esque colours in the level 25 kit. Probably in the bottom left hand corner you can see one of the riders. We have Dirt Eagle Fan, who are in the Dirt Orange Community kit. Cobra Kai, who are in the pale blue, I call it the Llama kit. Chicks Who Rides Bike kit. It's one of my favourites. And then we've got, sorry, ignore me. We've got Cobra Kai, who are in the Lava kit, which is a black kit which just says Lava at the top. You can see it on the left hand side, furthest left there's 2 riders. And then the Goosters are in the Llama kit, who are series winners last season, so it'll be good to see how they get on. With this course in B Division, we expect that it'll probably largely keep together. We might lose riders after they do sprints, or at the end of the sprint segment, but it'll be good to see if anyone kind of goes for long attacks in this. We didn't see many of them earlier, and it makes things a bit more interesting when they do. We've got a very packed field, as I mentioned earlier. I think halfway in the field is 12 watts per kilo sorted by sprint, so it'll be very exciting leading into the sprint segment as we have a bit of a climb beforehand, which will favour the riders who can push up big numbers there, keeping semi towards the front, and then push on through the sprint itself. If you get quite deep, it might help you for FTS. But realistically, we want to be semi towards the front, especially in such a big group, as there'll be lots of people sprinting off the front first across the line. And so there'll be plenty of draft ahead, even for the top riders here. So you see, it's a very experienced field. No one's going crazy off the start, settling quite easily to just below threshold, around 4 to 3 watts per kilo, 3 to 4 watts per kilo for most riders, and we'll probably maintain similar to that through to the first sprint segment. No one's really going to do too much work, I suspect, here. Once we get through to the sprint segment, or just before in the S's, you might see a few people pushing the pace a little bit. Generally, I suspect it'll be quite tame to begin with. It's a very strong field, and everyone's just going to be saving themselves for that segment, either just to hold on, as they know the pace will increase massively, or to actually go for the points themselves. Apologies for the language of some of the members. I'm not sure we can do too much about that, but it is what it is. You can see we're very bunched up here. I think this might be quite a nervy start, being the first race of the season. I expect not too many people will hang really at the back as we normally do. I think we'll stay towards the back, the top kind of riders, but they won't be absolutely hanging off. I mean, I say that, we see a couple of them doing so already. But it won't be quite as stretched out as you've seen a couple, as riders try and conserve a bit of effort up here and slowly sink their way back. You can see Molinari from Jet just pushing the pace towards the front a bit. So yeah, just a reminder, there is no sprint the first time we go through the sprint segment, which is the classed as the lead-in, which I tried to explain earlier. Thankfully Kevin's reminding everyone, as we did see a few people going for it earlier. We'll just move towards the front as you see Molinari pushing solid 5 and a bit watts per kilo, and Van Wyn from BZR following him. So what BZR did very well last season, they packed out a lot of the finishes. They didn't necessarily take an absolute ton of points in the segment, but they were always there at the finish with multiple riders scoring highly. And they regularly use their team to kind of cancel out moves, just sending one up to match the moves and make sure if they got away, someone's in there with them. See, Molinari still pushing quite a high pace, about just above 5-minute pace for most of the riders. And while obviously they'll be at 30% in the drafts, they won't be needing to do anywhere near as much as that. It'll just stretch out the field a little bit. We see Teresa from Rhino pushing the pace as well, one of our lightweight riders. So we've got a little break forming. See Eben from the box trying to jump across 7 watts per kilo. I can't imagine this is going to do too much. It's just a bit too early on. See Teresa pushing again, but most of the pace has dropped off. Might just be a little tester to see how people's legs are, not let people get too comfortable. So coming up here is the kind of little climb into the sprint. So it doesn't get too steep. We're looking at about 6-7% peak just around this bend, and most of it's at 5% or so. But it does last a little bit longer than you think, with Van Cutsum there just pushing the pace at the front. Not really sure if people are going to follow. As I mentioned earlier, it's a good time if you want to make a very early breakaway. Using this as kind of, well, people sit up and almost laugh at you occasionally, thinking that, oh, you know, they've got the wrong sprint. You can actually get away and get a decent gap. So I wonder if Van Cutsum might be going for this. But we'll see as we come into the sprint segment itself. So most of the riders just sitting up. It is just kind of speeds that super tuck if people want, but I expect most people won't do. Sometimes it can be a bit iffy with bikes, and a lot of smart trainers struggle to get back up to speed once you super tuck. So another little bit to note is when we come out of the sprint, it's slightly uphill. It's 1-2% at times, and it can kind of encourage people to be dropped. You know, you've done all this work to hold on. You haven't quite got across the gap yet, and then you've got this little 1%, 2% that can really eke out the legs. And the group speed going through that, especially the sprinters. It's one thing sprinting through the segment itself, but the sprinters will be up to probably 80, 85 kilometers an hour through the segment itself. And even afterwards, when they're doing very little, they're going to maintain that speed for a bit longer, especially when there's a lot of them. So it's one thing to kind of sit doing like 5 watts per kilo, 6 watts per kilo, trying to keep in. But because they'll hit such higher speeds, they can easily open up gaps there. And you can see a prolonged chase to try and get back on. So here's we enter the dirt section. It's another opportunity for a long breakaway. If people want to go through here, it's a very short lap, about 6 kilometers, 6.3 kilometers. So it's unlikely that people will kind of want to try and break away, because it's just one punch after another and you're barely recovering in between. But this is kind of one of the places that you can do, especially if you're going to try and grab some stronger first across the line points through that sprint. Again, people won't necessarily be expecting it, and you've got a little benefit using the dirt segment. Something interesting for some of you riders. Oh, you just see someone up the road, not quite sure what's happened then. Just going to try and take a little look who it is. Didn't spot anything going there. Oh, so you see Kevin pushing hard. Looks like Iron from Dirt Goosters up the road, not quite sure. Kevin jumping on. So Kevin's managed to jump straight onto his wheel, shutting it down early. Didn't really see what happened there. Wonder if there was a bit of a cutout or something. But yeah, generally it's all kept together through that segment. We thought we might lose one or two off the back. I think we have lost one rider off the back. There's a little bit of cutting in and out that seems to be happening for riders. See, the guy off the back's just gone again there. But generally it's all sticking together. So it's not very nice weather, very ominous. Yeah, one thing that's quite interesting about this ride, we've got one of probably the first Bs ever to go sub 80 ranking points here with Robin Anderson. One of the kind of riders who's done everything from ESRT. One of the teams he's in charge of. And he's managed to get a lot of really low rank points from doing well in Cat A race, especially the tiny race series put on by Zwift Insider. I know Graham, who's another sub 90 ranking rider, has been doing well there, picking up points in the A races. So I think I'd strongly recommend to Bs wanting to get better is try out some of the shorter, flatter A races. Obviously if you're going to have ones with major climbs in, you're going to struggle. But it's worth just giving it a little shot, seeing how you go and learning how to kind of sprint in different fields. As when we get into these top end B races, a lot of the sprints become more like the A races, going at about 30-40 seconds out, rather than the classic 10-15 seconds that you see in some more standard B races. So you just have a bit of a push on that uphill out. Lots of riders doing a little bit too much to get back onto the front. At this point, you know, if you look behind, just take a bit of view of the group so you can see. But it's spread out, but there's no huge gaps. So at that point you don't really want to be doing too much work to chase back on. There's no real need to. You can just slowly bring it back together without pushing up to 5-6 watts per kilo. We see a couple of riders doing there. Just want to keep it nice and gentle as much as possible throughout this, ignoring the attacks unless you think they're going to work. So every time you react to an attack, you're burning a little bit of a match at least. We see you've still got that rider chasing off the back, not really sure what's happening. Go see if we can find out who it is. Got a little bit to go. Oh. So it's one of the HISP riders, sadly 5 seconds off the back. Can't imagine they're going to make it back on particularly easily. So let's head back to the main group. It's unfortunate for them. We've just got to keep working because there are points available. Just show the finish point so you can see. So we've got a field of 78 riders. So all of them will be scoring points. You know, it's guaranteed 10, 11, 12 points for every rider in the field. So it is important to finish, and it will add up to your total, especially if you're down on the limit with your number of riders. There's significant advantage for those top 10, top 20 riders. But it does go all the way down. So it's important you really pack out that top 10, top 20, all the way down to top 30, 40 really, with as many of your teammates as you can. So it's not just about necessarily scoring yourself, it's about preventing other teams from scoring. Most of these teams here are going to have one or two absolutely exceptional riders, but the teams who can have the 4 or 5 who consistently score really well are going to be the ones that do best in this series, and that's why it's so good. I'd strongly recommend anyone thinking about taking part to go for it. So we come around this bend, we're just starting to come into the S's, and at the end of the S's is which is these back and forward switchback turns, with a lot of hills, nice and bumpy, nice and complicated. And at the end of them is the sprint. So I'll just show up some information about the sprint segment for you, just so you're aware what happens. So every lap we have first across the line and fastest through segment available. So first across the line is just rewarded for the top 10 riders who cross that line, whereas fastest through segment is the fastest times through the segment itself. The important thing with fast through segment is it isn't just about through the segment. You have to build up your speed early and try and hit a high speed early on in the segment and maintain it. So you'll see people starting their sprint quite early, and the last thing you want to do is to be hitting the front. So in a lot of courses, first across the line and fastest through segment aren't really compatible, because if you get too close to the front, you're going to be losing that draft and you're going to set a slower time. On this, as people push up the hill, kind of towards the end of the S's, you'll see the people going first across the line going early, whereas those going fastest through segment are going to probably move up a little bit just to avoid any gaps opening up and being caught on the other side of one, but they'll stay a bit more towards the back. Expect the top few FTS times will fly through the group though, and probably hit towards the front, unless first across the line really start pushing early here. So just get that information off the screen so you can just focus on the sprint. So you've got a couple of riders pushing the pace towards the front. From the BZR riders and DZR, Danish Zwift riders, putting a little dig in, so we're just coming into it. The problem here is you don't want to be the first rider to go, and the best thing you can do is move towards. You see really good tack there from DZR. They've sent one rider up the road while Bang Madsen uses him to just draft through an attack early. He's going to get a little bit of a gap over the group. I'm just going to stay towards the back and watch the riders targeting FTS here. We see Bang Madsen's got a couple more riders on his wheel who have managed to see that move and get with him. But generally a lot of the riders are starting to move through here. All of them are around 1 minute pace as they build into the downhill. So because we've got this bit of a gap, it's going to be interesting. The first person to go here is going to be in trouble while they bridge across, because they're going to have all the rest come through them. They need to start sprinting now. See that front group of 4 riders? They might just hold away. Just going to switch to them, see where we go. We've got Danielson from Valhalla, just take it from Simon Don Mattress from Watt Fabric, then Cutson behind Bang Madsen from DZR, followed by Paul of the Goosters and Robin Anderson. So it's a really good move from DZR, Danish Zwift riders there, sending one rider up the road. While then it allowed Bang Madsen to come from deep and get a bit of a gap over the hill. But a great move from one of the Watt Fabric guys and BZR to jump with him. They saw it, they reacted, they got on his wheel and let him do some of the work, which means they're able to profit at the end and take a few half AL points. If we have a look, you can see the should be able to see there the top FTS time. So Carson Teal, as you expect, is 1,500 watt 15 second, taking first, and then a bit of a mixed bag as we go down. We'll have that repeated again next lap, not next lap, in 2 laps time, so the next lap doesn't count. Just have a look back, see what I said earlier about getting a bit stretched out. We've got a couple of chase groups. I expect the first one should make it back on if they push hard here. Got Robertson in the box, Kirby of Rhino, quite an experienced rider, and this little bunched up group here, and the Cobra Kai riders from Dirt, and the Hisp riders presumably, Tobias Adinius from ESRT. It's surprising to see him all the way back here. He's normally a very strong rider. Just imagine they won't make it back on once. We're at this stage, coming through the Dirt, any individual rider isn't going to be making it, especially in this kind of B field. See 2 of the DZR guys here, Damgard, just holding on. See, as they've done there, they kicked hard. As soon as they changed surface, they kicked hard to get their speed up. Probably haven't done quite enough. We can see in the chat that Dirt Eagle found Lost Goose from a trainer dropout, it seems. But yeah, when trying to jump across, see their Alto pushing hard, they really need to jump across immediately. If you let a group ahead of you get the speed up, there's no way you're going to make it back. Especially not in fixed cat racing when you're in the higher categories where the speed is significantly higher. It takes far more effort to increase that speed than it does just to sit there in that front group. See some of them down to 2 or even lower watts per kilo. Okay, that gap's out to 9 seconds now, maybe even 10 seconds. And I doubt we'll see them again. It is a big group. If they work together, it might have happened, but it's very rare in scratch races that we get teams working together to bring gaps back. Especially over a group of about 50-60 riders as we have here. So just to confirm, for some of the fastest through segment times, we had first was Carson Teal for Rhino, second was Snowy Pruitt, just 0.05 seconds behind. And I'm not sure who was after. I think Ian Sully will have been third, Graham Miller from the box as well as in fourth, same as Snowy, Niels H from Watt Fabric in fifth, and Daniel Manalo, OTR in sixth. See a couple of people pushing the pace, just see what's happening at the front. Lots of people use that little climb there to try and hurt the sprinters. They've already done a bit of work, they haven't necessarily got a ton of recovery in their legs yet. So people just start to push the pace a little bit. You see Arwell Owen from Rhino pushing heavier rider, very strong, doing very well. And Therese as well, just doing the same she did last lap, just grabbing his wheel and pushing through again. Wonder if they're trying to make a serious breakaway here. You'd expect that you'd want Arwell to lead rather than letting Therese do the work, given the massive weight difference. It seems like they're happy enough just Theresa punching up through the climbs and pushing the pace through. But there's not much of a gap over the group, they're not really going anywhere. With these kind of gaps, you need to be, and trying to make the breakaway, you need to be so much more aggressive. Looking at doing maybe 30 seconds at 1 minute pace to get that 4 or 5 second gap. When it's just a couple of seconds, 1 or 2 people just jump straight across, especially with the strength of the field. If you think how we saw with Bang Madsen on the climb, how easily he could go when he started sprinting from the back of the field, 2-3 seconds to get his speed up on that climb, and an instant 2-3 second gap when he hit the front. So just take a little look back at that chase group. It's got about 17 seconds now as expected. Lost one of the DZR riders in between. Should be frustrating for them. I'm not sure if he was one of the ones who was dropping off a bit as we came out the dirt segments. Maybe did a little bit too much work there. See a couple of ESRT riders have gone already. A Rhino rider and Goose, as he said, with his dropout. Sad to see. It's not what you want in one of these races, but you might be able to jump back on when the group comes back round. And we've got to watch out for the time. So there's a cut-off after 130 or 135% of the winner's time, and beyond that you won't get points. So it's to avoid riders doing exactly that, kind of just waiting every turn for the entire main group to come around and then hitting the sprint segments with them, as it's against kind of the spirit of this racing. We've got another rider from OTR pushing off the front. I assume it's Scotty P, notorious for doing attacks like this. And we see Schultz from Watt Fabric trying to jump across. At this point, knowing it's Scotty P, I'm not sure I'd necessarily recommend jumping across. He definitely has the ability to stay away, but he regularly tries this kind of thing and then eases off. But Schultz is going very hard here. See, he's going close to 1 minute pace to get that 2-3 second gap over the group. But he's caught in no man's land a bit at the moment. He really needs to get across early. He wants to use these kind of rolling hills where he has a bit of advantage over Scotty. He's a bit heavier, probably significantly heavier. Just try and get onto his wheel early, and then he can just sit up. So they've got about a 5 second gap over the group now. But you see, his heart rate's up. He's doing a lot of work here to do this. And if he doesn't make it across, it's going to be very painful for him. Scotty in this situation had a bit of an interesting dilemma. Seems like he might want to go solo, but he's unlikely to stay away if he's just solo. With a group of 2 and ideally 3 or 4, there's a chance he might be able to stay away from this group. So he probably is best letting Schultz get back on, but equally doesn't want to do that and encourage the group to chase back. He knows they're going to push hard up these climbs. even though there's no segment points available for this lap. The group still attacks any climb there is, as we saw through the volcano, just to make sure no one's doing too little work, everyone's getting a little test in the legs. Expect now that gap's up to 8 seconds or so, might see some people start to jump across. It'll take probably a team of 2 or 3 riders to do it. But if they want to do it using this climb, it's probably the best opportunity they have for a while. And most of these teams will be on comms, so they'll be discussing things as they go, if they have any breath left to do so. So you'd imagine a couple are debating whether to try and go across with it. See, the pace is pushing a little bit at the front, but no one's really making that jump to get across. And one thing you want to be doing on this, well, one thing you can do on these kind of climbs, where there's a possibility of a super tuck, is attack quite hard over the top of the climb, then tuck early. You don't actually have to be doing 57 kilometers an hour at -3% to get the effects of the super tuck, because they don't want people to kind of come out and just instantly drop all their speed because they're doing 0 watts. Zwift, I believe, have kind of implemented it so it's a gradual increase, so even if you're doing 55 or -2%, you can get a lot of benefits from the super tuck without necessarily being in it. So on downhills like that, when you're not racing for when there's no point segments coming up, I'd chill out a little bit and just rest up your legs. You see, Scotty's been caught up now by the group. Just the speed they carry through downhills is so hard to beat, even with, you know, that's an 8-second advantage. It's one of the difficulties of this, but it's always good to see people doing things a bit more interesting, trying for attacks like that. Just probably wasn't the right place, especially given his power profile. Someone like this is far more in his favour, just on the pure flats, hitting big numbers. Interesting to see as we come through. So we've come through the sprint again, so next lap up we have more points on the sprint. We didn't see anyone go too early last time, apart from the Bang Madsen attack just before the climb. It'll be really interesting to see if anyone pushes down here or tries anything right into the start of the S's. As I mentioned on the end of the C+ stream this morning, in this category, unless people go very early, I can't imagine too many long breakaways surviving through the first cross the line segment. You have to go right at the start of the S's, or even better through here, if you want to hold it through. As you saw with Bang Madsen, people know people are going to attack up that climb. While his attack was very good and clever, it wasn't going to work. As in, he got points, he did really well. It worked to an extent, but he couldn't get the top position for himself because everyone knew something was going to happen there. Maybe not in that way, but they were ready and they reacted quickly. If you want to catch people out in such a strong field, you need to do the unexpected attack where it doesn't make total sense. And ideally, do it as a team, get someone with you. So as we come into the volcano, you've seen people attacking every single lap here. See, Therese has already moved towards the front. Most riders should be here ready on their edge, just knowing that something's going to happen. See, the group looks far more bunched than it has done before. When it looks bunched, that means riders are coming forwards from the back and dropping off the front. Everyone's trying to maintain that front position rather than being too deep. When we start to see it stretching out, it's the opposite. Riders are just chilling out, there's no worries in the world. But as you see, because the attacks have happened regularly here last lap, everyone's bunching up, no one's wanting to get too deep. See a couple of DZR riders getting a little bit deep, but there we go, one the box punching up here hard. Have right on the riders following them. It's not quite doing enough to break it away. We see a lot of the box moving forward. I wonder if they're going to try anything here. Assume it's more a case that they're aware that Eben was going to try this push, and so they're just ready to counter anything if they think it's going to go. We see Kevin, whether he's been on domestic duty today, has he been jumping on almost every single attack so far, just trying to bring the group back. And then Teresa again, really near the front, just having a fantastic day it seems. Just always there or thereabouts on these climbs, making sure no one gets away who isn't one of her teammates. But as we said, Evan there is pushing 7 watts per kilo, and the initial response where we saw the likes of Kevin and Teresa pushing 5-6 watts per kilo to get back at him hasn't lasted, and so now the group's just chilled out a little bit. If you look towards the front, you know, there are a couple of 5s, but generally everyone's just doing a little bit less, and that's why it's so important you make that brake stick hard to begin with. You've got to fully commit to it and hold that gap while the first few counter-attacks have gone. Once the first few immediate attacks have gone, people just settle in. No one wants to be pulling it back on their own, and so people just chill out a bit. Maybe some of the riders who don't think they're going to be the top scorers for their team start to do a bit more work here. But generally once you're there and gone, you're free to go, and no one's going to individually try and chase you back. You've just got to beat the pace of the group at this point, which sadly in a group this big is hard. You can see we're doing 50 kilometers an hour. So for most Cat Bs, you're looking at, you know, to hold that, you're looking at your best part of 450 to 500 watts, especially on the flats, which is going to be absolutely painful for everyone. So the breakaway is going to be hard, holding rides away. We've settled down a bit now after the downhill's kind of chilled out, but it is hard to open the gap in such a big group. If we're down to about 10-20 rides, it's much more feasible, or coming through kind of varied terrain. You can see Evans here right on his, well, even above his 5-minute power, having done a big 30-second push at 6-7 watts per kilo. He's going to be very much hurting at the moment. He's doing well, he's holding it at 6 seconds. Would suggest that he probably needs at least 10 seconds if he's going to hold this through the sprint segment. Interesting, his heart rate's not too high. I think his max is somewhere around 180. So he's working very hard, he's close to his limit, but he's just a little bit below. He's not absolutely dead yet. I'm sure when he watches this back he'll be cursing me, telling me who he was. And he had nothing in the legs. But he's doing quite well at this point. I see Scotty trying to encourage a chase. And Witzel from Watt Fabric looking to go as well. This is the time to start making moves. If people are going to try and get on his wheel or chase him down, you've got to punch up hard through this section and just keep working hard through the S's. But as we saw in the last lap, people got caught when they did that, so it kind of puts people off chasing. And remember, you've got a big group going up and down hills, so they maintain their speed much higher as the front's consistently changed. So lots of people are just going to sit in most likely and think they don't need to do much work here. See Manelo going for OTR, going very hard here. If he can hold this all the way through the S, he should easily bridge across. But will he have anything left for the sprint then once he gets there? This way it's important you have a few riders in your team sat towards the front. So traditionally a lot of these top teams will have riders just chilling at the back, but you usually want a couple of guys just towards the front ready to grab a wheel like that. He's managed to get away quite simply there. He's closed that gap down to Evan very quickly. Should have probably been a little bit more work with other riders prepared, but no one was expecting it seemingly, or wanting to react to it. So there, he's doing it very well. As soon as he's got on his wheel, he's chilled out. He's being sensible, he's just done a big effort. He wants to get as much recovery as possible. It's not the team way to kind of get a breakaway, but it's the best way to do it for yourself. And just bring up the segments, just another reminder for those who aren't totally familiar with the points yet. So again, compared to most series, it is important to kind of come in that top 10. Other series you kind of get 1 or 2 points for coming 10th, 9th. Here it's 5, 6. And there's a lot of points on offer for coming further down the segment. See the two just pushing up hard here. See the chase group starting to hammer it up. We went up about 8 watts per kilo, 9 watts per kilo last time. See a similar move from Bang Madsen. But Paul from Augusta and Rob Nansen were both ready there. And a lot of these riders are sacrificing FTS and just going for pure first across the line points here. You see, really good from Paul there, just sitting up. He knows he's made it in this front group. He doesn't want to be too close to the front, so he just chills out, gets some recovery in. As Bang Madsen and Van Cutsum have accidentally got, well, maybe not accidentally, but got a bit too towards the front. See Ilski from Watt Fabric hammering through. Now he's gone very early, but if he can get some draft through the segment, he's going to take it here. He's maintained it very well. He's just going to hit the front too early though. He might hold it. I think Marshall's coming through and Magnus Vikland's going to take it there. For ESRT, oh yeah, he went a little bit too early, sadly, as I predicted. See Magnus Viklund taking points, and Danielson from Valhalla also doing really well there. Snow from the box with another good time, flying through at the end. Lots of good, calm riding there, not to panic when they got towards the front, and that's the important thing. It's very easy to kind of go, oh, I'm at the front, I've got to keep pushing. I saw with Paul, as I called earlier, the best move there was just to sit up, wait, recover, and then attack again. But he left it slightly too late to attack through. As some of those riders who are a bit more chilled up the climb, maintained the speed over the top, and then attacked earlier on the downhill, ended up flying through the front. So it's really important to avoid the front at all costs on that downhill. See Teresa there, pushing through the group very quickly. I wonder if she's going for a little attack on this section. So next time through that sprint banner is going to be the finish line. Looks like she just chilled off, so maybe it was just accidental. Just maintaining a lot of speed from catching up to the group. Just take a look back, it's very strung out. We have this little bunch of about 30 riders, then a couple of individuals, and then another couple of little smaller bunches. And take a look at the minimap in the top right, so we'll just zoom in for you, see how spread out it is. Let's see who we've got off the back now. See if some of the sprinters have ended up hurt there. See Arwell Owen, a strong rider, he's gone there. A couple of the box, but they're together and doing exactly as they should, pushing very hard to get back on as early as possible. And then here we want to see Crawford just trying to minimising his work. He knows he's back on now. Doesn't need to move too far up. If it's team time trial sync, maybe you want to see Bang Madsen going again for DZR with another teammate pushing early here. This is definitely a breakaway attempt from them. Let's see, with team time trials and other races, if you're coming back on, you want to get into the middle, you want to give yourself a little bit of recovery. But in a ride like this, where you know it should be fairly chilled out through this section, you can just relax. See Bang Madsen, Kaelgaard, just chilling out now. They know their breakaway hasn't really stuck. There's riders on their wheel, and they can just relax now. What I'd recommend if you are a team for the finish, it's probably a bit late watching this, but I'd strongly recommend sending someone early up the road to lead others out. Try and get people to kind of push out, a bit like we saw with Manelo from OTR jumping across to Eben. That you want the top riders to try and go early, get caught in no man's land, and if you go into that climb not in the group's just going to swarm straight through you when you get onto the downhill, and there's no chance of rescuing a strong finish position from there. You've got to be staying in the group and avoiding the front until you hit the base of that downhill, otherwise you're in real trouble. It's very easy. It's a long sprint segment, well, it feels like it. It's only 9 seconds or so, but that's because we're hitting it at such high speeds. See, there's a bit of a bigger chase group coming back now. See Kirby from Rhino, Witzel from What Fabric, Fabrice Bordeaux. Rider's been around for a while, used to race APAC a lot with him. He's a strong sprinter. See Arwell Owen there, just leading them back. Going together, Sean Phillips as well. We might see him doing a little bit more work. Scotty P just falling off the back here. I don't think he's given up on that now. I would say Eben did a lot of work earlier trying to get that breakaway, and now he's blown up there. He's doing very well, pushing hard up the climb though, to be fair to him, but he's unlikely to make much up here. Just a couple of odd places of riders who have absolutely blown as well. We see this group working quite hard to try and get back on. It's a 5-6 second gap, but they've just kind of eased again. They need to continuously maintain this pace. At this point you kind of have to be selfless. See with Sean here, he's doing 3 watts per kilo. He's never going to catch the group doing that. For them it's going to be better getting back onto the group points wise, especially if they've got a bit of a sprint, than it will be for just sitting in and letting others do it. And at 10 seconds to go with 2-3 kilometers left, they really need to be pushing hard and just sacrificing a bit of their finishing sprint, a bit of their energy just to make it back on, because that's not a lot of distance to make up that big gap. Just get a little reminder of the finish points. We're just starting to lap Goose, I presume, up ahead. That's no discredit to him, but it's... Oh, I'm talking absolute rubbish. That's Teresa from Rhino with another attack. I will be amazed if this sticks, but it's good credit to her. She knows she doesn't have the sprint to be competitive at the finish. This is exactly what she should be doing, because that's a big group. There's what, like, if she knows, say, in this group of 50 odd riders, that she's going to come in the bottom 10 or so, it's worth trying something, especially if you've got a couple of other riders in that group, so you know you can kind of sacrifice it. I definitely would like to see a few more riders just trying it, but a lot of people are kind of scared in the sense of, you know, it's a big group, they don't want to get dropped out of it, they don't want to risk not scoring many points at the finish, but to me it's more important to try and risk it to get that win. If you can get a solitary win here, it's going to be worth a ton for your team. And in big fields like this, people aren't expecting it. See some of the Watt Fabric riders renowned for going early. One of them normally goes around 90 seconds out. And it works regularly. People aren't ready for it and people don't want to chase it. See another rider from Valhalla, from the looks of things, trying to chase. Yep, Dave from TV. Trying to jump across hard. Again, he's left it a bit late here with this group. Obviously, being the last lap, we're going to have quite a few riders not chasing as hard, trying to conserve a bit more in the group. So I doubt, again, it'll stick away, but if they get a couple more riders who've gone with him, see Carlson there from the SRT going as well. So if we get one or two more, this could be a serious breakaway. See Swanee going now. So the likes of Swanee there as well. There's a Chance Arneson, very strong rider, renowned in TTTs, the Vikings Latte team. But yeah, they've started to push, but the problem is we've had too many pushing now. So just take a little look back and you can see that it's just a long line of riders out the front, and that just works in the group's favour. It just pushes the pace up for them, and no one's really managing to bridge across, but you can see for Teresa it's killing her chances of a win. As that gap's going down to 3-4 seconds, it's just not going to be enough. See some of the stronger, heavier riders like Swanee, like Marshall, pushing towards the front, trying to increase the pace, whether that's a selfless act for their team or a personal effort to try and get in the breakaway. But that gap's going to be closed down very quickly. See another rider pushing hard. Again, we're talking all about positioning now here. We'll see most of the sprinters will be kind of 3-4 rows deep. They know that they can't sit too far back on this climb, but they want to adjust their position through the climb, starting a bit deep, not moving up too hard, and then towards the top making a decision. If they're too close to the front, just chilling out. If they're not close enough to the front, starting the sprint very early. See that Anderson just slowing down, making his way to the back, giving himself room to move, and then as we hit the percent, he's going to start pushing forward. See a couple hitting 9, it's not enough. See Rob Nansen going very hard here now. Max effort sprint from him here. He's wanting to go for a solid breakaway. See Snowy getting overtaken by him. Snowy needs to jump on hard here. He's left a little bit late. Molinari's left it late. Okay, so Snowy's pushing. He's trying to get back on his wheel. We're looking at that 5 metre gap that we want. Molinari's almost got it on him too. Snowy's not in the best position here though. He's going to be used as a kind of jump across for the likes of Molinari and NH from Watt Fabric. Paul, he's done well to show, but he needed to get on Anderson's wheel. See, he's chilled out a bit, but Anderson's pushing very hard here. He's solo though. Solo, and he's not going to maintain this. People are going to come through far too quickly. You'll see the likes of Keldgaard from DZR. Keldgaard probably going to take it. He just manages to pip. Oh, very close with Snowy. Very, very close with Snowy over the line then. Big credit there to Snowy. He recovered his position well. He was in no man's land coming downhill, and he looked like he almost went for the super tuck. Managed to push through again. Really well done to those riders there. Rob Nansen had a fantastic 15-16 watts per kilo there up the climb. Absolutely incredible to see. But he just didn't quite get the breakaway needed. There were already riders moving at the same time as him, and that stopped him from getting the kind of the big gap that he needed for it to be successful. Just take another look at the chase group. See Sean Phillips pushing through hard here from Arwell Owen. Witzel from Watt Fabric coming through as well. Bordeaux's just going to be pit to the hind there. He's not going to quite take him on. Do this little battle between Scotty P and Eben. I think that 5 second gap's going to be way too much at this point. Eben's not quite able to get out and sprint here, which is why I'd need to take this. So you've got a lot of solo riders going back. We've got a little group. Might be a bit more interested to follow, see what goes on. You've got one of the Cobra Kai riders, one of the BZR, two BZR riders, one DZR rider. I'm not sure, it's one of the HISP riders in the green. So we'd like to see as a BZR riders being a bit more tactically aware here. So they've got two of them sat towards the back. They should be talking, and one of them should be going very early on this climb where the other just sits in. An organised team, so it'll be good to see if they go for it. The aim is you pull one out, sacrifice maybe his best position, but it means the other rider's in a great position. Just sit and hang on the wheels. If no one chases the breakaway, then perfect for both of them. If they chase it, maybe the first rider's sacrificed, but the second's in a great position to come back. See, that's almost what they're doing, it looks like. See, Bessem's pushing hard to begin with, and then Burkhardt just holding on. He did a little kick, but he's just holding that position, doing these little bursts to stay behind them and maintain position as we come into the downhill. And we see the other DZR rider just slowing down. They're both in really good positions here, but they need to wait to see who moves first. Whoever moves first here is likely to sacrifice their finish. Unless we leave it too late. So we need to start sprinting from here if they're wanting big points. So it looks like it's leaving a little bit too late. Burkhardt will probably... he's not quite got that gap. He might take it if he can maintain it. And Cobra Kai, they left it very late on. So he'll probably just hold it. Bessem's coming through. Bessem's going to take it. Bessem's going to take it. So all of them left it a little bit too late there to sprint, which is why the first person to move then could do it. You need to start the sprint before the base of that downhill. If no one else has made a move by then, you've got to punch. Especially in a small group like that. And that's one of the key things when you're learning how to sprint. You need to pick kind of a point of no return. And at that point, no matter what's happening, you start to sprint. And until that point, you want to be the second person to sprint 9 times out of 10. Or even the third, grabbing wheels, using their draft and then just flying through them. The only exception is sometimes slow uphill finishes, where it's better to actually just go first and just commit to it, where there's not enough draft to make a significant difference. Things like the likes of the Volcano KOM. And possibly even the New York, depending on how you time it. Where you have the uphill finish after the long downhill. So a little group of 3 here. Every point counts. It's really important that they keep pushing. They might have other riders ahead, but if they've got a couple of sprint points, some of the riders back here might do, then they might be able to move themselves into a scoring position or push out another team's riders out of a scoring position. Some teams just turn up with the minimum number of riders, and so every place counts. Even if they're not necessarily going to earn extra points for the team themselves, it might stop the other team from getting points. So you see the Hispa rider pushing through hard there. Built a bit too much momentum. See Alto responding from the SRT. He's just doing enough to hold his wheel, and that's what it's about here. Both them on disc wheels, ready for a downhill sprint. See the Hispa rider get up out the saddle, and that's a visual response view. Also, riders here will be constantly looking back and forwards at the right-hand bar. See Alto pushing very hard here. He's got to break that 5-meter gap if he wants to win it here. See the Hispa rider responding early. He's got to get there before that gap opens too much. See, he's just dropped off here. He doesn't think he's necessarily going to make it, while Alto tries a little super tuck. Maybe not the wisest of moves with such a small gap. He needs to get out and sprint now. Otherwise, the Hispa rider can easily come through him. It's going to be a pure sprint battle here. I think the Hispa rider might just have it if he can get out and sprint. Looks like he's got nothing left, though. He is gaining a little bit, but that's way too late to be getting all the way out. Unless Alto's died. Alto's just dropped to nothing. Oh, he's just been pipped there. Not sure why he just dropped to like 0 watts per kilo. But that cost him hard. So we have the last few riders over the line. We have a little watch of Goose pedaling his way around, as we see if we've got some results up for you on ZwiftPower. It's a very interesting finish. It's very tactical on this course, and timing comes into everything. You're always making little adjustments there to try and get in that good position. Not too close to the front, but equally not far enough back that you just can't come through if someone attacks early. I'm not quite getting the results through yet. Okay. See if we can get them up for you. We'll go on the live page. Just get some basic ones up for you. Sadly, have to leave Goose to plod through. Here we go. So as you saw, Snowy just took the win from Kjellgaard from DZR. It's going to be a very tight finish. Rainer Beckers from What Fabric. Hadn't seen too much from him in the ride until then. Getting a really strong finish. Marshall, not a renowned sprinter, but doing very well there. Again, that shows how much of it is about timing. So if you look down the list, you'll be able to see that the real big sprinters not necessarily performing so well, whether they're tired from doing some of the actual sprint segments, or just showing how much it is down to timing. So on the likes of TL with his 1500 watt sprint, Robin Anderson, as we saw, just went a bit too early, and it's one of those things, if you make it, it's fantastic, and if you don't, you can easily drop back 10-15 places. Sometimes it's better to kind of sacrifice that first place once you're in that stage. You know, if it's very close there, it might be worth just sacrificing it, whereas early on, you can get away with it. You can go for the early attack, not make it, readjust and come back. So with Snowy, you got a bit too far forward early. Even towards the finish, you just readjusted, got a better position, then attacked again. And it kind of took him through for the win. Just go down, have a look at some of the further down results. So you see a couple of Watt Fabric guys packing out there, 6 of them, 5 of them even, in the top 20, which is a great result for them. So some more of the SRT guys there as well. A couple of Dirt Riders, but on different teams, with Marshall being on Cobra Kai, Snowy being on Box. Valhalla with Arne and Vegard doing well. Some of the traditional Chris Park down there, Benjamin Buckby. So a couple of rides doing well. Again, we think it's going to be very much in Watt Fabric's favour there, having packed it out. And I saw them doing semi-well on the segments. They weren't necessarily top, but they were picking up regular points, which is important. And we've got a big cohort of Dirt Riders around 20th to 30th. And a couple more BZR. So it looks like BZR haven't necessarily done as well as last season, similar with Goosters. Looks like it'll be Watt Fabric taking the lead probably into the next stage. So we'll be up next week, where you can come join us. I'll be covering B+ again in the afternoon, and it'll be on the Three Sisters course, finishing up the radio tower. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you next week.